welcome to Connect, the podcast for California MBA, where strategy, innovation, and leadership come together to shape the future of the mortgage finance industry. This is where voices and ideas driving our industry forward meet real-world execution. My name's Paul Gigliotti, CEO of the California MBA, and if you're here, you care about building a better industry for your business, for your clients, and for the future of housing. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our 2026 President Council sponsors whose support makes these conversations possible. AmeriHome, Consolidated Analytics, Loan DNA, Funding Shield, CMG, Guild Mortgage, Rocket Mortgage, Wiener Brodsky Kidder, and Western Alliance Bank. So a huge shout out to our President Councils, and thank you for your continued dedication and support. All right, audience. Today, I am excited to welcome the one and only Neil Armstrong, newly appointed CRO of Indecomm. Neil, thank you so much for being here.
Excited, man. I get to do this with a friend. I love it, man. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to be great. I think we're going to get a lot of insight and guidance from you. I want to start off by saying congratulations on your new role.
Thank you. I feel like I've been doing this a long time, and I'd be complete transparent. It's like it was a surprise. It happened actually when I was at the Gathering Conference with my COO. And I owe a lot to the people at our company because it's not hard to go sell when you execute the way they do. So, great work on their part. My team is very seasoned, very easy to grow when you have people that you can count on. So a lot of credit goes to them.
Nice. Good. That's true leadership because it does. I often talk to the team at California MBA. We're all a big orchestra. And when we all play together, that's when the music or the magic really happens, when the music all comes on together.
Yep.
Indecomm has been a strong name in our industry for a really long time, helping mortgage companies think through automation, AI, operational efficiency, and the real work that happens across the mortgage life cycle. And I say real work because sometimes we get bogged down in minutia that doesn't really matter, right? But we have to
Yeah.
look at what's real and what's practical. And you bring a great perspective because you're not just talking about technology for the sake of talking about technology like a shiny object. You and Indicom focus on how lenders can improve process, reduce costs, create scalability, and an actual platform that makes a better process, creating more production, keeping the consumer front and center. That's what I think of when I think of Indicom.
Yeah.
So again, welcome. We're thrilled to have you here. And I am going to jump right in with a couple of questions for you
Okay.
because this is where the rubber meets the pavement, so to speak. Like, I think we've got a lot of great things to talk about. So let's start with the market, reality versus cost pressure. We all know the headlines: rates, volume pressure, affordability, margin compressions. But beneath the headlines, lenders are really having to look hard at how they operate. And before we jumped into recording, we were just talking about that. Neil, from where you sit, what are lenders most focused on right now when it comes to cost and efficiency and trying to create some breathing room in this market?
Breathing room is a very good word. I I often talk about, are you sleeping at night, right? What's keeping you up at night? And
Yeah.
there's things that keep every company up. But the one thing I'll say I'm really proud of our industry for, Paul, is that I've seen a dynamic shift. I would say the last 18 months, 2 years, where lenders are taking a very, very hard look at what's going on in their own ecosystem, what's working, what's not working. One of the biggest drivers of that is doing an operational assessment, right? So in our world, an operational assessment is, and I do them probably every 2 weeks, once a month at least, is actually just either getting on a Teams call, but better being in a boardroom and actually having the client just whiteboard their process. And what I think is really dynamic about this is you and I could be working together for 10 years. And then when you put your part of the process up on the board, someone goes, well, that's not how we do it. And they're like, yes, it is. And there's this, you kind of work the same way all the time. You just forget about what could be working and what's not working. So what they're doing is they're diving into it by process and getting more granular about it. And then I call it, look at areas of opportunity to automate, right? So my role with this is to really just listen to them, watch their process, walk up to the board, and then just start putting cost per function. Now, when I say cost per function, this is probably the biggest change that I've seen in our industry. It's easy to say, Bob Brookschmidt could say, hey, we're $12,910 to do a mortgage, right? Right. We all could agree upon there's a big number there. But why would you automate or why would you change a process if you're best in class against the benchmarks that Stratmore or other companies use, right? I don't want to change a process for a lender that's working. They're best in class at something. My role and Indecomm's role is to look at those areas where they should be automating, they should be using maybe some offshore functions, or they should be actually re-engineering their process first. I always say you can't automate a bad process because all you're going to do is get bad output with that as well, right? So the biggest change I've seen is because of the margin compression, they've been more open to dive into it by per function. And, we work hand in hands with our clients to create an ROI document per function. Them taking a look at what's working, what's not. I think that's been the biggest change because we were forced to do it. I spent 28 years in this business. Half of them have been on the lender side. And I had to do the same functions at my roles at, PHH and Citi Mortgage, where I had to dive into the cost per function and try to be more fiscal is a good way to say it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. You and I were talking about this offline before we started. We've seen a tremendous amount of growth, but it's been a shift more than a growth. It's been what are people kind of moving towards and preparing for versus what their traditional, scalability model used to be, which you hire, you let go. I don't know. Just there's been a huge shift where I've seen it, and it's great. I'm excited that when we do see a rate reduction, that I know a good portion of my clients are ready. So that's that sleep at night thing, I guess. That I gotta
Yeah,
mention.
yeah. I think that's important. I'm really curious as you were talking about, going in and seeing, your customer's workflow. And we talk more about technology and its usability. And I also will throw in there now it's flexibility with AI because true AI technology offers so much more flexibility than like OCR. Um,
Hmm.
are you seeing, and this was when I was the COO at Pinnacle Home Loans, this used to drive me crazy. Are you seeing the ability to drop the concept of working in silos more and
Hmm.
more? So when
Hmm.
you're whiteboarding or you're working with a new lender and you're
Hmm.
talking about a process and a procedure, are you seeing more and more workflows kind of coming together so that when
Yeah.
an underwriter finishes their function, they know what, closing's gonna do, and closing knows what underwriting did so that there's that connectivity between those worlds?
Yeah, what a great question. I'm laughing because I had a meeting with a client on Wednesday with our COO, Krish, and it's all the conversation was about was why do we have to look at, loan setup, processing, underwriting, pre-fund QA, closing support, all as different silos. Like if we were to automate functions and we broke it down to where 76% of that workflow has been automated, why can't you have an underwriter and processor be the same function? Meaning who should have borrower contact? And I'm laughing right now because this is their idea. They're like, well, listen, if we could do all these things and we know somebody's done it with you, couldn't we just change couldn't we have less, like, silos within the process?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes, and it's, like, funny you mentioned OCR, and it's just, like, it starts with that. And it's so funny because 'cause I'd say the biggest thing I'm seeing working right now is people moving from that traditional OCR type of technology to machine learning-based, data extraction and classification. The why that's critical and important is this: when you go and analyze someone's workflow, it is astonishing how much lenders are still manually inputting information. Underwriters spending 28, 30 minutes inputting in data that's wrong. That is not a good use of their time or a good use of their cost structure, right? So what I'm seeing working and where it's breaking down those silos is, we built a system and now it's fourth iteration. IDX has been in our ecosystem for 20 years. The last 5 years, it's been machine learning based where, it classifies the documents. And that's great. You're a retail lender. Don't let your processors and underwriters be entering data. You shouldn't be doing that manually anyways, right? Automate it. But what's exciting about that is it allows then once it's in your ecosystem, it allows for the data extraction of specific functions, meaning a title report. If I get access to the source data, the XML document, I can take a title review process from 38 minutes to 3 minutes. I can take an appraisal from 40 minutes to 6 minutes. So by breaking down those silos and not looking at traditional, oh, your role is LOA, you're a processor, you're an underwriter, you're a closer, you could have a customer advocate. You could have somebody that has that role and that's one thing I love about what automation does. Think of it as a digital assistant, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I can have my core people have more borrower contact, more customer engagement. That benefits sales, recruiting, operations, cost, everything. But I'm smiling because I would love to take credit for what you just said. But literally the COO of one of our clients said, I don't want silo. I want to bring this down to a more, it was perfect segue,
Yeah,
man.
that's a smart COO that you were talking to.
Very
Yep.
smart CMO. Very proactive. I'll
Yeah,
say
yeah, that's a very proactive response,
it
right?
is. So, and we're always been reactive. So seeing that's refreshing.
Yeah, that's, I'm loving this conversation as we're gearing up for MIC because a lot of the panels are about being proactive as opposed to reactive. When you had just mentioned automation, so where are you seeing automation actually work today inside operations? So if you take,
Mm.
whether it's an Indecomm solution or whatever the case is, where are you seeing the biggest lift with AI OCR combo?
Mhm.
What's going on? Where are you seeing the you mentioned an underwriter that was entering data that's
Mhm.
probably wrong and was taking 45 minutes. Like, is that where it is? Where's the biggest lift?
Our biggest lift is in that first, the document recognition stage, right? The blob comes in, getting it accurately indexed and classified. That's kind of like a step one. It's like starting automation 101. It's like the first thing you need to do. You need to get that right. You can't be manually doing it or using an outdated OCR that gets 78 accuracy on first pass and 22% human in the loop to do that. It's a waste of time and it creates more errors. But what's great about it is in preparation for this, what I did is I went to my team and I asked, okay, of all of our automation implementations and all the ones that we deployed over the past 6 years, give me the data. I want to see the client's data. I don't want to see our data. I want to see the client's data. So what we're seeing is a 60% lift in underwriter productivity, right? That means what we're seeing is IDX flowing into a system like an automated underwriting engine like Decision Genius, where it is actually creating a lot of the underwrites being done before the underwriter gets to it. It's saying, okay, underwriter, since you're the highest paid skill set and you're the forensic piece in this equation, we've identified 5 problems with the loan. We've highlighted the income that we've already calculated. Because of that, we now see a large deposit. We're going to highlight that and tell you to source that and figure it out. Right. That
Right.
is huge. That's a huge lift for underwriters. We've also seen, and this is like, I was really wrong about this number, but we have 52 different processes that we've seen automation deployed with our clients' ecosystem. Think of those as ordering and review functions. Now, I will say this. I would rather have an LOS, like the new web version of Encompass, automate the ordering functions. You shouldn't be, if you can have your LOS do that, do it, right? You don't need a company like me to order it. Now, we do use a system to automate those functions, but it's not where our focus is. Our focus is to provide a bigger lift when those functions come back, like fraud comes back, flood, appraisal, title. Automate those functions. And the one thing I see a huge, which I think is exciting, and last week when I was at the gathering, I've had 3 follow-ups and all 3 have given me their checklist, right? How much checklist are we using in our industry? If you're using a checklist, whether it's a pre-close checklist, a pre-fund checklist, whatever you want to call it, a checklist to validate certain things, those things are like 88 to 100% automatable. Go there. Start with that. I always like to say to a client, if you've never automated anything, you need a win. The first thing you automate needs to be a win. You need to see the ROI and it needs to be quick deployment. That's an easy win. Okay. So those are the things we're seeing. Also, I will say that I'm not going to give away too much right now, but we have invested a significant amount of money into the next generation system that we have. I'm not can't give you details, but I'll say this. We've built deterministic rules that allows us to just pull information off and just say, like AUS guidelines, investor guidelines that says, is this eligible because of this? Yes, that's deterministic. You don't need AI to do those pieces, right? I know there's a lot of confusion out there around this part because I feel like there are certain companies that oversold AI as it's not AI. You're just looking up against rules and bouncing it up there and automate those
Yeah.
simple, no questions. And it bothers me that there's people going out there saying it's AI. It's not AI. But then what we've built is now you've got generative AI in the middle. generative AI is really helping us take another level forward, and that's going to be even more productivity, which we're seeing it now. We're already deployed it in several clients. But then our next version, which is later this fall, is now we're going to have agent assist. So if I'm an auditor and I'm looking at a file, I can have my own digital AI assistant that I can say, I don't understand this part of the audit. It doesn't seem right to me. Can you dive into this? And it'll actually scrub all the data and do a forensic analysis and give a recommendation on it.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it is really taking it more to an agentic level at that point.
Hmm.
So it's exciting. We're investing the money, we're seeing the results, and I see the models every day. We run actually tests through it. Clients send us stuff for tests. We test our own work. It is crazy how fast it's moving.
So with that being said, and I was biting my lip when you were talking because I was waiting for a
You
drop.
were.
But oh my
You
gosh,
were.
too saw, and I see it now, but also when I was fully representing Prudent AI as their
Yeah.
chief growth officer, I would talk to organizations, and they would, I'd say, well, what are you doing for AI? And every conversation came back to AI is ChatGTP, and it would make me giggle inside for the first 2 seconds, but still hearing it a year later or 2 years later, I'm like, you people need to understand that that's not AI. Like, there's that has, when you see companies that actually run AI solution,
Mhm.
that's where you see I first noticed the bendability and customization to workflow
Exactly.
with AI because you can do anything. You no longer, pretty soon, you're not going to hear solution providers saying, well, I can't integrate there, I can't integrate there or
Mhm.
here because you have AI. You can integrate wherever you want. It just lays right over it. But,
Yeah.
it's to your point, Neil, so many companies oversold AI
It did.
that now I feel like the industry is coming back and saying, really, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the industry has been educated the past
They've been
year.
educated. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
And it's
Huh.
great seeing that. And lenders are now saying, wait a hot second. One, it's not that expensive to build. And
Mm.
two, I mean, it is expensive, but it's not like this out of the world thing, right?
No.
It's like, it's quickly become what the internet was. So when
Mhm.
the internet first came out or cell phones first came out, it was hard to use. You didn't know how to deploy it and it was really expensive. And now that it's been here for a while, it's less and less of all of those things. So it's more
Good.
accessible,
Yeah.
which I think is great. But to your point, so we talked about what can happen. My
Mhm.
next question for you, and I'd love to hear this from you because, going back to when you opened up, you talked about walking through with your lenders, whiteboarding what the process is. Where do you see most of those lenders getting stuck? Is it
Mm.
data? Is it process? Is it change management? Or is
Engagement.
it leadership discipline? Or all the above? Where
I
in
think
your world, where is it?
it's all the above, but I'll tell you the one thing I see is like, starting with that baseline, I keep on harping on this and making sure the data is accurate, making sure the indexing is accurate, right? But the biggest thing I see is change management. I've seen companies deploy tech that have hit a home run, right, with us because so we've learned a valuable lesson over the past 6 years deploying tech. We have to, in our implementation strategy, have a section on change management, even though we expect our client lender to like also do it, and they are now. But the change management is critical. I have a client that actually did this. They actually deployed automated underwriting to half their population and not half because the underwriters had a little bit of hesitation on do I trust AI, right? Do I trust automated underwriting, right? But when you see the results of the lack of errors and the productivity double with the population group that was using it versus the ones that not, all of a sudden the hands went up saying, I want to use it too because it reduced my errors and it can help me in my bonuses, right?
Yeah.
But it really starts at the top. Where I think they get stuck, and I'll be honest, is like being more open to what the possibility of their operational model could be, right? It's that
Mm,
leadership side of it. And there's no successful deployment, there's no successful implementation unless it starts at the top, man.
yeah.
You have to start at the top. And it's filtered all the way down. I think that is extremely critical. I don't know. Maybe the other one I see is they say, I want to automate this. And I ask why. Tell me what your focus is at automating it. Well, the system or the process isn't working. I figure automation will take care of it. No, it won't. If you have a bad process, automation just complicates that. So you got to fix that process first before you automate. That's another thing I see that you got to put some brakes on. You got to be say, hey, look, let's take a step back. Let's take a look at where your holes are and let's focus on the low hanging fruit because once they get a taste for what it does, it's easy to deploy the rest of it. And I'm a big person about putting things into phases, right? We have a client, top 10 lender. 2.5 years ago, their CEO looked at me and goes, I have a huge business problem and I think you can solve it. He walked through it with me. And he says, by this date, he gave me a date, I need everything done. And so we did like a 6 phased approach, but it took him as the leader of the company, identifying the problem and saying that by X date, if I don't have it done, we're in trouble as a lender, and we deployed it. We had it all happen. And now I look at it a year after deployment and it's like a well orchestrated machine because his vision, he said, hey, look, this is a problem I'm just foreseeing. I think you can solve it. Can we tackle this in phases? Let's go consumer direct first. We'll go correspondent second, hit servicing last. And that's leadership, man. That's like identifying where the bottlenecks are going to happen, or what happens if rates dropped 100 basis points? How are you going to scale this business? You're going to
Yeah.
hire and train in 60 days just to let them go and miss your margin opportunities? It's just not sustainable.
Yeah. I think to your statement, and it's coming up again as we're wrapping up our conversation, but in the beginning, your statement was, I think we've learned a lot of lessons.
We
And I
have.
think part of that is because this market has stuck around a little bit longer. We had a blip of relief, but then now we're not really there so much. And I think that we had to learn. We had to learn what's beneath the headlines, right? It's not just rates, consumer hesitation, what products are needed, how can we support our team? And I think the industry learned that this go
Yeah.
around. I think it's matured quite nicely.
Mhm.
Not that we have gotten all old, but matured in thinking. And it's refreshing to see it. So if you're seeing it with some of your customers, that's even more proof point that we're sitting back as an industry and saying, we can't look at this as like, AI or increased workflow or BPO solutions. We can't look at that as a shiny object. We have to break this down. And we have to look at what is the process, how to redefine the process,
Mhm.
and then use technology to innovate that process, right?
100%.
So to
100%.
that point, let's talk about real quick before we wrap up. I'm curious on your thoughts about the balance between human and technology. As we know, technology can help, automation can help, AI can help, but at the end of the day, we're serving families. We're a very relationship driven organization, internally and then externally with support to the consumer. How
Mhm.
should lenders be thinking about the balance between technology and people, the people side of the business?
Yeah, I think it's to start with this, people are our biggest asset to any organization, right? Um, my staff, my underwriting team, my audit team, they're great. They're our biggest asset. Now, but we have deployed automated underwriting and automatic audits or automated audits to their world. The learning curve is there, but they're still making that decision. They're still the ones signing off on it, right? The one thing I've never been an advocate of, and I can have a friendly conversation and disagree with maybe some of my counterparts on this, but being on the lender side, like I have, I wanted to make technology the forefront to reduce errors. I wanted to make it scale. I did not want it to talk to my customers. I did not want it to be borrower facing. So think of it the balance between people and technology. The technology is your assistant. Your digital assistant allows you to do more with less errors and it allows us to reduce our cost. I don't want technology phone calling my client, right? Or now there is some, and I've been on this side of this fence too, is there's some lot of benefit into like enable chat conversational AI strategy and servicing where you can deflect some of those calls that you're getting on the 15th of the month, right? For a servicer. That's great. But it also routes to a live agent when there's somebody that really desperately needs help, right? So I'm not a big fan of automating borrower communication contact. I am a big fan of automating email information to give data to the client. Like when their loan's been approved with certain conditions, hey, these are the 5 documents we need to close your loan. That's great. But I have a client right now I'm working with, and we do some post closing work. And now they're trying to say, how can I get my processors to be more customer facing? We'll take all the review functions off their plate, right? If I can free up 3 hours a day that 3 hours a day can be spent with the clients, right? So that's how I balance it. I never, and who knows what the future holds, right? I see a lot of the stuff that we've invested in behind the scenes and I'm excited about it. But I'm also pragmatic about the fact that, look, we're always going to be a people business. It's not going to change. I mean, this is a big decision. For most people, it's the biggest investment they ever make in their life. So you want to have that, synergistic approach where your borrower comes first. You are constantly in communication with them. They see you, they hear your voice. You know, I think technology should be behind the scenes and should be able to help you make your business more cost effective and scale.
Yep, I totally agree. Using the technology, you gave an example as calling the consumer, being more consumer facing. The
Mhm.
technology can be there to provide data analytics to the individual that's calling the consumer
Mhm.
to empower that individual with what conversation to have with the consumer.
Mhm.
So if it's a top of funnel conversation, it can empower the originator.
Yeah.
Um, on who is the consumer and what are they looking for. If it's a closing conversation, they can empower, the closer or, the LO assistant or whoever it is on what would work most convenient for this consumer for
Yeah.
assignment.
Yeah, and I love
Um,
that analogy because the closing piece, it's kind of a stressful thing for
yeah,
borrowers. What's
yeah.
gonna happen? When's it gonna happen? How soon are we
Everybody
gonna
always gets stressed out at the end. You know what I
course.
mean? Like,
Always.
so I love your analogy of it. It's a team, technology and the human then create this
Yeah,
experience. And it's,
yeah.
I was just watching some podcast last night. I feel like it was pretty late in the night, so I wasn't really paying attention, but it was an LO podcast. And I really don't plug into those too often, but I found this one to be really interesting because it was based off of the concept of if you're going to be the same LO that you were 8 years ago, you are going to fail because the LO that's going to utilize technology and AI is the one that's going to advance themselves because they have more data, more
Mhm.
accessible data at their fingertips. So they're going to know
Right.
how to interact with every one of the potential consumers and prospects so much stronger because they understand more about this consumer. So they're going to be able to create that relationship. And
Yeah.
that's really at the end of the day what it's all about. It technology is it's your like your super cape to superhero costume. That's all it
It is.
is. It's not
It
a
is.
replacement.
100% agree,
Yeah.
man. 100%.
Well, Neil, this conversation has been so awesome. I really appreciate your perspective, the work that you bring to the industry and what Indicom is doing. And I love hanging out with you and seeing
You
you
too, man.
out on the road. Um,
Seems like we see each other, like, all the time. It's
I
like we
know. I
we
skipped
do.
the last crew, but I'll be back out there.
Yeah.
For our listeners, Indicom continues to be focused on helping mortgage companies streamline operations, create scale, and bring practical technology into the real work of mortgage lending. Thank you for tuning in to Connect. Advocacy is constant, innovation is constant. And in a market like this, execution matters now more than ever. Until next time, stay engaged, stay sharp, and keep building with purpose. Neil, thanks again for joining us.
Great seeing you, man.
Good seeing you too.